I always thought that in my family we weren't rich, but we weren't in need either. We lived well. Without luxuries, without shortages. Or so I believed. My mother was always good at managing money. One of those people who knows exactly how much is in the account, how much is spent, and how much should not be touched. I never questioned anything. I trusted her more than anyone. My father died when I was 19 years old. It was sudden. A heart attack while he was sleeping. There were no goodbyes. There were no last words. Only silence. After the funeral, my mother became more closed off. More hardened. More distant with me than with my siblings. I was the oldest. The strong one. The one who wasn't supposed to ask questions. So I didn't. Years passed. I worked, contributed at home, but I always felt that something was unbalanced. My siblings never seemed to worry about money. I did. They traveled. They changed cars. I barely made it to the end of the month. Every time I asked, my mother said the same thing: your father left nothing. Only debts. And I believed her. Because why would a mother lie? The first crack appeared on an ordinary day. A routine errand. I went to the civil registry for a document and the woman behind the counter frowned. Are you the son of the man who just passed away? I nodded. And have you already claimed your share? I didn't understand. I told her there must be a mistake. She lowered her voice. Here you appear as a beneficiary of a trust that has been active for years. I felt heat. Dizziness. As if the ground had shifted. A trust. Active. For years. I left without saying anything. I didn't confront my mother that day. Nor the next. I needed to understand first whether I was mistaken, or if I had been lied to my entire life. Investigating, I discovered something worse. Not only did the inheritance exist, it had been distributed. Among everyone. Except me. She looked at me as if I were exaggerating. You didn't need it. We didn't talk that night. My mother finished her coffee, washed the cup calmly, and went to bed as if she hadn't just torn something out of my chest. I stayed sitting at the table until the house fell silent. Listening to clocks. The refrigerator. My own breathing. It wasn't the money. It never was just that. It was the certainty that someone decided I was worth less. The next day I confronted her for Real. Not with shouting. Not with reproaches. With facts. Printed papers. Dates. Signatures. This isn't a mistake, I told her. You signed it. She looked at them without touching them. She didn't even try to deny it. Yes. One single syllable. Without guilt. Without pause. I asked her why my siblings did receive it. Why them and not me? She sighed. That sigh adults use when they think they're about to teach you a life lesson. Because you've always been independent. They needed more support. And besides, you always questioned everything. That's when I understood she wasn't talking about money. She was talking about punishment. Did you punish me for thinking differently? She didn't answer right away. She stood up. Walked around the kitchen. Straightened something that wasn't out of place. Then she said, "Don't make a big deal out of it. You're still my child." That sentence froze me. Because it sounded like a threat disguised as love. I tried to stay calm. What if I had needed help? She finally turned to me. But you didn't need it. She said it with certainty. As if she had been there every night I doubted everything. As if she had seen the times I pretended I was fine. That's when I understood something brutal. She didn't see my efforts. She only saw my silence. After that, the house changed. There were no shouts. There were no open fights. There was something worse. Coldness. My siblings avoided the subject. Some of them didn't even know the full truth. Others did, and chose not to get involved. I began to feel like an uncomfortable guest. I paid expenses. I helped. But I no longer belonged. One night I overheard my mother saying to someone on the phone, "He's always been complicated." Complicated? For not obeying. For not being grateful for scraps. For not accepting being the convenient child. That was the night I made a decision. I didn't announce it to her. I didn't discuss it. I simply began to withdraw. I stopped telling her my plans. My fears. My achievements. I started working more. Saving. Building something that couldn't be taken from me. Not out of revenge. Out of survival. Because I understood that when love becomes conditional, it stops being a refuge and turns into control. Months later, I moved out. No long goodbyes. No scenes. She only said, "I hope you don't regret it." I didn't respond. Because for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid. I didn't know that decision, years later, would change everything. Moving out didn't make me free right away. It made me responsible for everything. At first, I lived with just the essentials. A mattress on the floor. A borrowed table. Silence. But that silence didn't hurt anymore. It was different. It wasn't rejection. It was absence. And absence, over time, stops bleeding. I worked like never before. I took double shifts. Weekends. Projects nobody wanted. Not because I dreamed of something big. But because I couldn't afford to fall. For years, I barely spoke to my family. Short messages. Birthdays answered with a "thank you." Nothing more. My mother never asked how I was doing. She only sent brief phrases, "I hope you're well. Remember you have a home here." She never asked why I left. She never talked about the inheritance. As if the subject had been erased, just like me. Over time, my life began to take shape. Nothing spectacular. Nothing to show off. But stable. A better job. Some small savings. A circle of people who saw me, without conditions. And something curious happened. I stopped thinking about my mother every day. Not out of resentment. Out of exhaustion. Because carrying unanswered questions also weighs on you. That's when what I never planned happened. I began to feel peace. Not euphoric happiness. Not fulfillment. Peace. The peace of expecting nothing. On an ordinary Tuesday, my phone rang. Unknown number. I didn't answer. It rang again. It was her. Her voice sounded different. Lower. More fragile. "Can we talk?" She didn't apologize. She didn't explain anything. She just asked to talk. She told me she was sick. That she needed tests. Treatments. Time. I listened in silence. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel joy. I felt something worse. Nothing. Then she said the sentence that changed the air of the call, "The doctors say that you're compatible." That's when I understood. She wasn't calling me as a mother. She was calling me as a resource. I didn't answer right away. I thought about all the nights I doubted my worth. Every time I was told I didn't need anything. About the inheritance I didn't lack. And for the first time, the decision was completely in my hands. I told her I needed time. I hung up. And I stayed sitting there, staring at the wall, with a calm that surprised me. Because I understood something final, she no longer had power over me. I agreed to see her. Not out of obligation. Not out of guilt. Out of clarity. When she arrived, it took me a few seconds to recognize her. Thinner. Smaller. As if the years had charged her interest. She smiled nervously. Thank you for coming. I nodded. There was no hug. She spoke first about small things. The weather. The coffee. The city. Then she fell silent. And finally she said what she had come to say. I need your help. She didn't dress it up. She didn't pretend. She needed a procedure. And I was the only viable option. I listened without interrupting her. When she finished, I took a deep breath and asked something simple. Did you know you would need me someday? She looked up. She didn't answer right away. I didn't think it would come to this. That was her answer. Not, I was wrong. Not, I'm sorry. Just that. Then I took out the documents. The same ones she had signed years earlier. I placed them on the table. I did think. I explained that I knew everything. The accounts. The distribution. My exclusion. Her hands began to tremble. I did it for the family. That's when I understood the final truth. To her, I had never been part of that family. She asked for forgiveness. Not with tears. With exhaustion. A late apology, one that wasn't meant to heal, but to save herself. I put the papers away. I looked at her. And I said something I never planned to say. I'm going to help you. Her eyes filled with relief. But I wasn't finished. Not because you're my mother. But because I'm not you. I agreed to the procedure. But I made one thing clear. After that, there would be no calls. No visits. No forced rebuilding. I didn't owe her love. And she didn't owe me loyalty. Only humanity. The procedure was a success. She recovered. She sent me messages for weeks. I never replied. Not out of resentment. Out of closure. Because I understood that helping her didn't give me back what I lost, but it gave me back to myself. Months later, I learned that my siblings discovered the truth. The inheritance. The lie. Their relationship was never the same again. That was their karma. Not punishment. Consequence. I went on with my life. Without inherited wealth. Without false reconciliations. But with something she never gave me, peace without conditions. And I understood something that took me years to learn. Sometimes, the greatest inheritance is knowing when to leave with dignity.
Don't forget to subscribe and like to hear more stories.